David transfers a fortune to his secretary. 5 years into our marriage, David's secretary, Sarah Miller, posted a screenshot on social media showing a transfer of $80,000. Caption: dating isn't even as sweet as working here. I had just commented keep up the good work, only to find she had blocked me. David called, immediately launching into a furious tirade. I just gave an employee an early bonus for her birthday. Why did you message her and curse her out? My patience with you isn't a license for your irrational behavior. Clearly audible through the phone were the comforting voices of the company's entire staff and Sarah Miller's tearful sobs. Before I could explain, the call was ended, and I was blocked. Immediately after, his secretary brazenly posted another photo showing a transfer of $150,000. I knew it was David Smith's compensation to her, but this time, I didn't care anymore. When David Smith walked through the door, I had just thrown away the takeouted finish. After the miscarriage, the doctor said I needed to eat bland food this month, but I hadn't listened. It was our 5th wedding anniversary today, so I'd checked out of the hospital early to come home. I had specifically booked a hotel for a candlelight dinner with him. I had waited all day for his reply to my messages. If I hadn't seen Sarah Miller's social media posts and received that phone call right before leaving, I'd probably still be sitting in that hotel like an idiot. When David got home, he glanced at the empty dining table, his brows furrowed in displeasure. Not cooking tonight. I nodded dismissively, scrolling through my phone. You already ate out, didn't you? In the past, no matter how busy I was with work, I would always come home early to make him dinner. If his brows so much as twitched, I felt like the sky was falling. A humble posture is destined not to receive equal love. It's a shame I'm only realizing this now. David Smith didn't even notice my unusual demeanor. He walked straight up to me and opened the packaged cake he was holding. I brought this especially for you. Didn't you say you wanted something sweet the other day? Soon, a cake that looked like it had been picked over appeared before me. The dents and small holes on it clearly showed where pieces of fruit had once been before being dug out. I glanced at it, then returned my gaze to my phone. He hadn't expected such a cold attitude from me, and his brows furrowed in impatience. Emily Jones, what is your problem? You said you wanted cake? I went out of my way to bring it back, and now you're throwing another tantrum? When does it end? Things others have touched. I don't want them. I find them dirty. As I spoke, a message notification sounded from his phone. David Smith looked down, an almost imperceptible smile curving his lips. I didn't need to guess whose message it was. When he looked up, his expression was cold, but there was a glint of excitement in his eyes. All right, fine. I'll go out and buy you a new one, okay? I come back from a busy day at work only to see your cold face. I must owe you something. He finished speaking and turned to leave the house. I remembered that I had left the hospital in a hurry today and hadn't had time to pick up my medication, so I got up, changed my shoes, and followed him out. Meeting David Smith's eyes, which were subtly flashing with anger, I said calmly, "You're going out to buy something anyway. Drop me off at the pharmacy down the street. I need to pick up some medicine." Hearing this, he bristled like a porcupine, becoming instantly wary. You're coming with me just to buy a cake? Are you crazy? Why don't you just put a leash on me? I understood his irritation in the past. Whenever he went out at night, I would question him endlessly, unable to feel at ease, but this time, I sighed and explained, there's a pharmacy just a block away from the neighborhood. You can just drop me off there. I have no interest in following you. As soon as I got in the car, I saw him frantically ordering a blueberry cake on his phone. When we reached the pharmacy entrance, I got out directly behind me. A flicker of surprise appeared in his eyes. His tone was no longer as violently as before. Wait for me here after you're done with your medicine. I'll come pick you up. With that, the car sped past me, splashing muddy water onto my legs. I irritably wiped myself off and walked into the pharmacy after buying the medicine. I waited outside for 2 hours. My body grew stiff, but there was no sign of him. A sudden clap of thunder in the night sky startled me awake. Before I could call a taxi, a downpour drenched me completely. Remembering the doctor's instructions, I hurried into a convenience store and bought an umbrella, but it was already too late. Waves of sharp pain in my abdomen made me involuntarily squat down, curling into a ball. If it hadn't been for a passing car that saw me and kindly drove me back to the apartment complex, I probably would have ended up in an ambulance. Just as I got home, dried off, and took my medicine, David Smith slammed the door shut, making a deafening noise. Why didn't you tell me you were back? Do you know how many circles I drove in the pouring rain? I looked for you for a whole hour. You think this is funny messing with me? I froze, my hand holding the water glass. Completely baffled, he had blocked my number, and now he was blaming me for not contacting him. I had waited for 2 hours, only just getting home, and he claimed H looked for me for an hour. I couldn't be bothered to call him out on his lie. My face hardened, and I said coldly, "For me to contact you, you'd have to unblock me first, wouldn't you?" With that, his lips tightened, and he took a deep breath, suppressing his anger. He walked into the living room and placed the rain-soaked cake, without a box, in front of me. It was too late, they didn't have any boxes. I had to go to a bunch of places to find this. My gaze fell on the matcha cake, and I felt nothing but weariness towards his string of clumsy lies. On my phone screen was Sarah Miller's latest social media post, a photo of a blueberry cake. Caption: "Blessed by a wonderful boss during the day, accompanied by my love at night." I felt a cynical urge to laugh but lacked the strength to even pull my lips into a smile. A flood of words was at the tip of my tongue, but only one sentence came out. "Okay, thanks for your trouble. Just throw it away." His features tightened abruptly, and his eyes turned bloodshot with rage. "Are you f***ing kidding me? I drove all over for you, and you're telling me to throw it away? Are you treating me like a dog? All I did was give an employee an early bonus today. How long are you going to make a scene about this? I'm the boss. Don't I have that right? I haven't even settled the score for you messaging her and cussing her out, and you're pushing your luck." I reached up and pressed my head, which felt heavy and painful from the rain, weakly. I began to speak. "You're overthinking it. I really didn't mean anything by it. There was no need, and I didn't have the time." At that moment, I was mid-sentence. He cut me off angrily. "All right, enough. You're always like this. You're in your 30s and still getting jealous like a young girl. There are plenty of beautiful young women out there. Can you be jealous of all of them? You're insane." I had argued with him countless times over these trivial matters in the past, humbly and desperately wanting to hear him say he would only ever love me. But now I didn't think that way anymore. We were both adults. Was love that needed to be questioned still worth having? I knew he wouldn't believe me if I said I wasn't making a scene now, so I simply said, "If that's what you want to think, I can't help it." With that, I got up and walked straight towards the bedroom. He ignored me, threw the cake from the table into the trash can, and sat down to scroll through his phone. Occasionally, suppressed laughter could be heard. Then he went into the bathroom, seemingly busy on a phone call. I made up a fresh set of bedding and moved it to the guest room, bumping into David Smith just as he came out of the bathroom. His impatient gaze fell on my hands, and his lips were tightly pressed together. He held back for a long moment before finally saying angrily, "What is this supposed to mean? You want to sleep in separate beds? I haven't even complained about the disgusting smell of blood on you, and you're making a fuss with me? Do you still think you're a girl in her early 20s? I wouldn't want to touch you even if you were naked. If you can't sleep because of insomnia, don't message me." I didn't reply to him. I went into the guest room on my own and locked the door. Every night in the past, when he didn't come home, I would toss and turn, unable to fall asleep. I would call and message him, only for him to throw a bottle of sleeping pills at me the next day later. I got used to taking medication to sleep, but unexpectedly, this time, fearing drug interactions, I fell asleep naturally and soundly. What I once thought was insurmountable, I now realized wasn't so difficult after all. After searching all day, I finally found a reliable divorce lawyer. Meanwhile, David Smith's company account posted a video of a celebration. In the video, someone nearby was raising a champagne bottle, the liquid sprayed into the air, and David Smith turned to shield Sarah Miller, his back getting soaked. I recognized the suit. It was a gift I had given him for our wedding anniversary last year. This year's gift had already been returned by me. As I was about to turn off my phone, David Smith called. "I sent you the address. I'll pick you up in a bit. There's a surprise." A sarcastic smile curled my lips. He had already given me enough surprises, without waiting for me to refuse. He hung up directly. I hadn't expected him to unblock me before the divorce, while I was taking my medicine. David Smith's car pulled up downstairs. I received his message and went out wearing comfortable loungewear. David Smith's smiling gaze landed unexpectedly on my pale, bare face and instantly turned cold. "You're not putting on makeup or changing clothes. How am I supposed to take you out? Go ahead and be angry, but don't make me look bad." As he finished speaking, Sarah Miller, wearing an evening gown, rolled down the passenger window. A delicate, innocent face peeked out, She stuck out her tongue playfully. "Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Smith. I forgot to tell Emily. I couldn't reach her." Remembering my blocked account, I smiled nonchalantly. "It's okay. A man's face isn't something a woman gives him. Besides, having such a beautiful secretary is proof enough of your capabilities." My words choked David Smith's reprimanding words in his throat. I glanced at Sarah Miller in the passenger seat. Seeing that she had no intention of moving, I simply got into the back seat. All the way there, Sarah Miller cheerfully chatted with me, constantly talking about the birthday party the company employees threw for her. Her tone was full of regret. "Emily, I wish you could have been there. I really wanted you to see how impressive Mr. Smith was. I'm so jealous of you." David Smith's face was dark, and although he tried to talk to me several times, I ignored him completely. When we arrived at the hotel, Sarah Miller got out of the car and went directly to David Smith's side. I took a quick look and followed behind them. The server immediately addressed Sarah Miller as Mrs. Smith. David Smith wanted to explain but glanced at my bare face behind him and ultimately said nothing. His expression was so comical it made me want to laugh. The company employees were all crowded around the elevator entrance, waiting. When the elevator doors opened, seeing David Smith and Sarah Miller standing in front, everyone's expressions froze. A flicker of awkwardness crossed their faces. Robert Henderson, one of the company's shareholders, saw the situation and quickly spoke up. "Ms. Jones is finally here. If it weren't for you connecting us, this project wouldn't have been signed. Everyone in the company has you to thank today." I knew he was trying to save me face, so I smiled gratefully. No need for titles. Who knows what position I'll be in after I get back from overseas? As I finished speaking, David Smith, who had been walking ahead, suddenly stopped. He turned to look at me, his brows furrowed, his eyes filled with confusion. "Overseas? You're going overseas? How come I didn't know? When did I agree to that?" Their eyes met across the room. The atmosphere, which had just started to ease, turned icy cold again. A server nearby, thinking we couldn't find our seats, stepped forward to break the awkwardness and led us into the private room. Sarah Miller naturally sat down next to David Smith. I glanced at her, said nothing, and sat down on the other side. The enclosed space quickly filled with smoke, and I had to step out for some air, unexpectedly. David Smith followed me out of the room. He quickly walked up and grabbed my wrist, his tone surprisingly tense. "I didn't forget our anniversary. Please don't be angry, okay? This is the company's team building event today. I didn't have to invite you, but I did it to make it up to you." Looking at his flustered expression, I suddenly laughed. "I'm not angry. Don't overthink it." With that, I turned and walked straight towards the restroom at the end of the hallway. Splashing cold water on my face cleared my heavy, groggy head a little. When I returned to the private room, another new female employee was sitting in my seat, busy offering a drink to Mr. Smith. Hearing footsteps, and combined with the awkward expressions of everyone at the table, she slowly turned her head, meeting my indifferent gaze. The next second, she abruptly stood up. "I'm sorry, Ms. Jones. I was just offering a drink to Mr. Smith. I didn't mean anything else. Please, have a seat." Before I could speak, Sarah Miller generously waved her hand. "Emily isn't a young girl in her 20s. She's not that petty, right, Mr. Smith?" Mr. Smith always says Emily is generous and kind. In my opinion, Mr. Smith is as generous and kind as Emily. Otherwise, why would he give me such a large advance on my bonus for my birthday? All my girlfriends were so envious. They wished they could quit their jobs and come work for our company. After saying that, she winked at me playfully. A collective gasp instantly filled the air. Robert Henderson's hand, raising his glass, paused mid-air. He didn't know whether to drink or offer a toast. In the past, when things weren't so blatant, he could still cover for David Smith, but today, the knife was right in front of me, leaving him in a dilemma. Amidst the onlookers' amused yet terrified stares, I calmly nodded and sat down. Sarah Miller's lips curved in a smile. She picked up the glass in front of her and walked over to me. "Emily, I'd like to offer you a drink. It must be so hard balancing a busy job and taking care of the family. But don't forget to take care of yourself too. Women should always look beautiful, even when they're older." With that, she pointedly glanced at the casual clothes I was wearing. As if I hadn't seen her implication, I said calmly, "I can't drink. I'll just have tea." At my words, David Smith's brow furrowed. "You can't drink? Emily Jones, are you serious? This is what you mean by not being angry. This isn't the place for you to cause a scene." Ignoring my words, Sarah Miller directly picked up a small cup and filled the empty glass in front of me with liquor. Then she handed the glass to me. I pressed my lips together, suppressing the anger in my heart. When I spoke again, my voice was already cold. I said I can't drink today. I'm on medication right now. Sarah Miller glanced at the grim-faced David Smith with a sweet laugh. She forcefully pushed the glass into my hand. I pushed it away casually, and the liquor splashed out of the cup onto her chest. Her evening gown was instantly soaked. A crisp sound rang out. The glass cup hit her foot and shattered, leaving a red cut. Silence fell over the room. David Smith's face was as dark as ink. His entire body shot up from the chair. He slammed his cutlery onto the table. Emily Jones, are you trying me? How long are you going to keep this up? Sarah Miller has already offered you a drink to make amends. Don't be so ungrateful. Sarah Miller's eyes were red, tears welling up. I saw them, and a cold smile I couldn't suppress curved my lips. Make amends? Offer a drink? Please tell me which sentence just now was an apology. Is there something wrong with my ears, or is there something wrong with your brain? David Smith was enraged by my nonchalant attitude. You don't understand reason, do you? Then I'll offer you a drink myself. With that, before anyone could react, he grabbed the back of my neck, tilting my head back. Then he picked up his own glass and poured the liquor into my mouth. Caught off guard, I choked violently on the high-proof liquor. Physiological tears welled up in my eyes. Through my blurry vision, I saw David Smith lift someone into his arms. He yelled angrily, threatening me. Apologize to Sarah Miller right now. Otherwise, we're getting a divorce. I can't stand a lunatic like you for another minute. Just when everyone thought I would completely lose control and erupt, I recovered, my face bright red, and nodded. Okay. Let's get a divorce then. David Smith was stunned into silence by my words. I picked up my jacket, put it on, and turned to leave, but after only 2 steps, my vision went black, and I collapsed to the side. A pool of scarlet liquid soaked the floor beneath me. Seeing this, David Smith shot up from his chair, his face filled with horror and disbelief. He rushed to my side, grabbing me and shaking me violently. Everyone in the private room was too scared to breathe, shocked by the sudden turn of events, but he thought I was still acting. He screamed furiously at my pale face, Emily Jones, stop acting. Have you had enough? Don't think this will stop me from divorcing you. Robert Henderson finally couldn't stand it anymore. He ran to David Smith, grabbed him, and pulled him away. Are you insane? Your petty squabbles before were one thing, but today you're going to divorce Emily Jones for this woman? David Smith, I don't think you should run this company anymore. The man was forcefully pushed back and fell onto the floor, taking a long moment to recover. He watched helplessly as Robert Henderson took me and rushed me to the hospital, just as he was about to get up to follow. Sarah Miller cried out in pain, Mr. Smith, my foot hurts so much. Am I going to be okay? Will I be able to walk again? David Smith heard her and spoke anxiously, then I'll take you to the hospital right now. It's on the way. Sarah Miller clearly hadn't expected him to say that. Before she could react, David Smith had already taken her to the car. A final team building event was abruptly cut short in a bloody scene. David Smith dropped Sarah Miller off at the hospital's outpatient clinic and left without hesitation. Meanwhile, I had just been wheeled out of the operating room. The doctor's face was cold, and her tone was stern. The patient had severe uterine adhesions and heavy bleeding. She had a miscarriage only a few days ago. How could she drink? Is she trying to die? David Smith arrived just in time to hear this sentence and froze in place. Robert Henderson, however, remained calm and patiently asked about my condition. After the doctor left, David Smith lunged at him, grabbing Robert Henderson's collar. He demanded angrily, You knew about her pregnancy? Why did you keep it from me? Was the child yours? Robert Henderson was stunned by his question, then became even more furious than him. He pushed David Smith away, his face hardening. He said coldly, Are you still trying to make excuses for yourself? How do you think you closed that project? She didn't let me tell you because she didn't want to stress you out too much. She went into the hospital the night after the business dinner. We couldn't save the baby. But what were you doing then? You were busy picking out gifts for Sarah Miller. You're not worthy of her. Get lost. Even if I was blind before, you're on your own with this company from now on. With that, he turned and walked away decisively to help me with the hospital admission procedures. When I weakly opened my eyes, I was already lying in a hospital room. David Smith was by the bed, covering his head in a collapsing manner. Hearing me stir, he suddenly looked up. I didn't want to see him again. I just stared at the ceiling and said calmly, Let's get a divorce. I've already had the agreement prepared. You just need to sign it. David Smith's face filled with intense unwillingness at my words. Just as he was about to speak and explain, the hospital room door was pushed open from the outside. Sarah Miller limped in, holding a stack of papers. Tears welled up in her eyes, her expression incredibly wronged. But this time, David Smith no longer had the tenderness and affection he had shown before. Instead, his face was cold. He sharply reprimanded her. Don't you know to knock before coming in? Do you do this at the company too? Do you do this at your own house? Has no one taught you? A flicker of surprise quickly crossed Sarah Miller's face, and she froze in her tracks. Tears poured down her face, and she immediately turned and ran out of the room. The diagnosis report and medical records she was holding scattered all over the floor. A cold smile curled my lips, and I said sarcastically, recovering so quickly, "Youth really does mean a strong constitution." At my words, David Smith looked awkward and uncomfortable. He got up and picked up the reports one by one. He glanced through them casually, then froze. Seeing that I wasn't paying attention out of the corner of his eye, he quickly reached out, tore them up, and threw them into the trash can. A cold laugh welled up in my heart. I had already seen those documents in the text messages Sarah Miller had sent me. He still thought it was a secret between the two of them. To be honest, David Smith's acting was terrible. It was only because I loved him so much in the past that I turned a blind eye to everything. But now that the feelings were gone, I saw how full of holes his every action was. David Smith wasn't satisfied after tearing up the reports. He took out the trash bag directly and left the room, using the excuse of buying me food. His transparent attempt to cover his tracks was laughable. When he returned, he was solicitous and attentive, taking care of me meticulously. But no matter what he did, the only response he received from me was silence. My words had already been exhausted during 5 years of waiting. The lawyer knocked and came in while he was talking incessantly. He handed him the prepared divorce agreement. David Smith's face instantly darkened when he saw the contents. He lost control and yelled at the lawyer, "Get out. I don't need you." Soon, only the two of us were left in the room. Seeing that he clearly had no intention of signing, I said calmly, "You know, when I've made up my mind about something, no one can change it. Just like when I went against my family's wishes to marry you, and just like divorcing you today." With that, he finally pulled himself out of his memories, his face full of pain and despair. He covered his head with his hands, messing up his short hair. "Emily, I really know I was wrong. Can you give me a chance? You clearly know I haven't treated you badly all these years. Just, emotionally." His voice trailed off as he spoke. I spoke without any emotion. "There's no need. You're already tainted. You can never be clean again. Too many moments with Sarah Miller have been woven into our 5-year marriage. So many that I often couldn't tell if the real third party was her or me. You indulged her riding roughshod over me for years. You indulged everything she did to me. You indulged her being sarcastic to me in public. We can't go back to how things were." I paused for a moment after speaking. Seeing that he had no reaction, I continued, "You're not trying to win me back now because you love me. You just don't want your shameful secrets exposed. You just can't stand the thought of the woman who used to follow behind you so quietly suddenly leaving. You know very well that I wouldn't message someone and curse them out. You just wanted to humiliate me. You just wanted to satisfy your pathetic vanity." After I finished speaking, David Smith fell into a deeper silence. Another full month passed. He was more attentive, caring, and loving towards me than ever before. But all of this felt like the sad, pitiful flicker of a dying flame. I knew very well that we were over. Everything he was doing now was just locking the barn door after the horse had bolted. Seeing that I had recovered enough, he finally went back to the company. Before I knew it, it was time for me to be discharged, and I started making arrangements to go overseas. David Smith promised to accompany me through the discharge procedures, but when I walked out of the hospital, he simply sent me a short message. The company was too busy, and he told me to wait for his call. I had already waited 5 years, and now I didn't want to wait another second. He still hadn't signed the divorce agreement, but that was just a matter of time. As I was about to leave, Robert Henderson sent me a message. He said David Smith's company was facing serious financial problems. The business partners I had secured had all withdrawn their investments. Finally, he reminded me not to be soft-hearted. This was the price David Smith had to pay. A bitter smile appeared on my face. Even Robert Henderson, an outsider, knew that David Smith's path over the years had been too smooth with my help. Just as I was about to turn off my phone, he added an apology. I'm also partly responsible for things getting to this point between you two. I always wanted to keep it from you before, so it wouldn't affect your relationship. I thought David Smith would realize his mistakes and not go astray, but I was wrong about him. I read the message over and over. After a long moment, I scrolled down and typed a reply. It's okay. I know it wasn't easy for you either. After sending it, I booked a flight overseas for the next day. Looking at the messages in my work group chat, I suddenly felt a sense of relief. Fortunately, I hadn't given up my career for David Smith back then. Men's vows are unpredictable variables. It's safest to hold your own destiny in your hands. The moment the payment went through, I saw Sarah Miller had posted several more updates on social media. I thought she was gloating about her victory. I was about to click to mute her notifications but saw something unexpected. She was frantically crying on the app, claiming she had been sexually harassed by her boss, gotten pregnant, and then brutally abandoned. In her words, she portrayed herself as an innocent victim. My brows furrowed tighter the more I read. I went back and clicked on her profile, only to find that the screenshots of the transfers she had posted earlier had been deleted, and under the post accusing her boss of sexual harassment, the comments section was filled with angry condemnation. After a quick scroll, I suddenly looked at my phone and laughed. David Smith might have thought he had found true love. Unfortunately, the other party was just after his money. She probably put him on blast online after failing to extort more compensation from him. It seemed they had completely fallen out, not wanting to go back to the old house, and not wanting anything related to him. I turned off my phone and took a taxi to the mall to buy some toiletries and essentials to take overseas. After paying and getting ready to leave, I noticed that David Smith's company's products and advertisements that used to be displayed in the mall had all been removed. Feeling something was off, I checked my phone and saw Sarah Miller had exposed a lot of damaging information about his company online. He had secretly swapped materials after signing contracts with business partners I had worked hard to secure using my connections. Seeing this, I was trembling with rage. I quickly messaged my friends from before, explaining the situation. I told them I was completely unaware of this. I said they should handle it through the legal system and not worry about sparing my feelings. I thought he was just a jerk in relationships, but I never expected him to be a dishonest businessman too. Just after I sent the message, David Smith called. I hung up and blocked him immediately. I stayed at a hotel that night. I thought once I went overseas, we could finally put an end to things, but the next day, when I arrived at the airport, I saw David Smith at the entrance. Seeing me appear, he rushed forward and grabbed my wrist. He demanded angrily, "Why did you block me? We haven't sorted things out between us. How can you just leave? You can't do this to me. The company is on the verge of collapsing. If you leave now, it'll be completely ruined." I looked at his face, filled with despair, his eyes bloodshot. Suddenly, I laughed coldly. "Before, you let Sarah Miller walk all over me. I thought you had grown up and could fly solo. Now it seems, maybe not. Do I need to remind you? There's no love between us anymore. I'm divorcing you. Do you think it'd help you? I can't wait for you to be as miserable as possible." At my words, his eyes filled with despair, and he looked defeated and dejected. I shook his hand off. After only 2 steps, David Smith rushed up from behind and held me tightly in his arms. I could barely breathe, feeling suffocated. Yet, he continued to yell into my ear regardless. "I just made one mistake. Why can't you forgive me? Are you going to watch me destroy myself?" Just then, Sarah Miller rushed out from somewhere, live streaming on her phone. She was rambling into the phone. "Look closely, everyone. This is the boss who sexually harassed me. If he doesn't pay me $5 million today, it'll ruin his reputation." Hearing her words, David Smith's grip loosened, and his face was stunned. I took the opportunity to escape from his grasp. I quickly put on my mask. Just as I was about to leave, Sarah Miller called out loudly, "Look closely, everyone. This is the scum's wife. She's his accomplice. Stay away from these 2 people in the future. If you run into them, your life will be ruined." David Smith heard her accusations and immediately started cursing angrily. "Turn off your phone. Who gave you the nerve? Turn off your phone right now, or I'm calling the police." But Sarah Miller was unmoved. Her face still wore a cold smile. The gentle expression she once had was gone. "Scared? You have days when you're scared too? You want me to turn off the live stream? Fine, transfer me $5 million right now, and I'll leave without another word. And I promise I'll never appear in your sight again." My brows furrowed tightly, and my gaze towards her was icy. I said coldly, "What happens between you two has nothing to do with me. I have my own things to deal with. With that, I immediately turned around. After only 2 steps, my hair was suddenly yanked. It hurt so much I cried out instantly. Many passersby stopped to watch. Some even took photos and uploaded them. Sarah Miller's posts had gone viral online, and many people recognized her face. They started accusing me in her defense. She knew her husband was doing bad things outside and didn't stop him. That kind of woman deserves to be dumped, deserves to be cheated on. How could she tolerate her husband bullying a young girl in her early 20s? Wasn't she young once? How could she do something like this? We're all women who can't see her intentions. She lets other women take care of her husband while she stays home and spends money happily. It's disgusting. I think she should be the one paying that $5 million. Immediately after, before I could see who it was, I heard Sarah Miller's angry shouts near my ear. If you hadn't been unable to control your man, how could I have suffered his evil deeds? You're his accomplice. As she finished speaking, David Smith reached out and forcefully yanked her away. Sarah Miller was pushed aside and quickly spoke to the live stream. See, everyone? They're saying they're not together, but he's already hitting people for this chi. These two are in cahoots, bullying an outsider like me. Everyone. I'm going to get justice today. David Smith was completely enraged by her words. Losing control, he lunged at her, snatched her phone, and smashed it on the ground. He slapped her face repeatedly with loud smacks. Sarah Miller lost her balance, and coupled with David Smith's strength, she actually fell onto the ground. Blood instantly spread out from beneath her. Everything I had gone through was happening to her now. Once again, her angry wails quickly turned into desperate cries for help, but David Smith was still not satisfied. His eyes bloodshot, he straddled her and punched her face repeatedly. He screamed that everything he was going through now was because of her. I reached out to pull him away but was pushed to the ground by him. There was nothing in his eyes but hatred. Seeing that the situation was escalating, the passersby stopped watching and immediately took out their phones to call the police for her. The police arrived before the ambulance. They controlled David Smith, who was still out of control and kicking her, and took him to the police station. I also had to go and give a statement. Only after confirming that I had nothing to do with the incident was I released. Before leaving, I double-checked with the police that the investigation results would be released online. Then I rebooked my flight and took another taxi to the airport. As soon as the plane landed, I threw myself into work. My boss, hearing the news from back home in the US, offered several times to let me take time off to adjust, but I declined. Only when I was working did I feel like myself. Now that I was free from the burden of family, it was a time for me to relax. During this time, Robert Henderson called me several times from back home, asking how I was doing. We both tacitly avoided talking about what had happened. He said he had started a new company, and it was just beginning. With his previous experience, it wasn't as hard this time. Hearing this, I nodded without surprise. I had heard about this from friends before. After leaving David Smith, they had all chosen to work for Robert Henderson's new company. His character was well known. More importantly, his relationship with his wife had always been good, which also showed that he could stick to his principles. After hanging up the phone, I felt as though I had woken from a long dream. I saw news about David Smith and Sarah Miller again about a week later. The police back home in the US released the results of their investigation. Although David Smith was the one who initiated the physical assault, he filed a lawsuit demanding that Sarah Miller repay all the money he had transferred to her. Sarah Miller, in turn, sued David Smith for violating contracts and engaging in illegal activities. She insisted that the money David Smith gave her was her salary and bonuses. It was the amount she deserved. However, the police produced the contract she signed upon joining the company. Her income during her employment far exceeded the amount stated in the contract. She was ordered to return the excess amount. Finally, numerous designer luxury goods gifted to her by David Smith were found at her residence and were also returned. The netizens who had previously supported her were furious when they realized they had been manipulated, and they all unfollowed and blocked her accounts, even leading to a wave of online shaming targeting gold diggers. Many of David Smith's former colleagues came forward to expose her actions while she was employed, using the boss's favoritism towards her. She had exploited many employees. She had also brazenly stolen others' project bonuses and claimed them as her own. Sarah Miller's name became synonymous with being a gold digger. As for David Smith, his company's illegal operations were factual, and the evidence was conclusive. In addition, there were countless witnesses at the airport to the assault. Going to prison was a certainty. There was no escaping it. Before he was sent to prison, he requested to see me. That was when he was told I had already gone overseas, so he contacted Robert Henderson instead. After his company went bankrupt, he sold the company assets to cover the breach of contract penalties. Then he entrusted Robert Henderson with selling the house we had lived in. A month later, I received a package delivery from back home in the US. Inside was a bank card and the divorce agreement signed by David Smith. Robert Henderson sent me the bank card's password and told me the house had been sold. Looking at the messages on the screen, my heart was surprisingly calm. Perhaps I had already let go, without even realizing it. What was left of that wrong relationship was just a sense of regret. Now, even that regret had disappeared. David Smith and I had absolutely nothing to do with each other anymore. 6 months later, I contacted Robert Henderson again and heard that Sarah Miller had changed her name and had plastic surgery. She had moved on and found another rich man. Unfortunately, that man's wife wasn't as tolerant as I was. The moment she discovered her husband was cheating, she rushed into Sarah Miller's apartment and hit her, disfiguring her surgically altered face. She even uncovered everything about Sarah Miller's past with David Smith and told her furious husband. Both were extremely angry. After suing Sarah Miller to get their money back, they exposed her online again. This incident went viral online once more. Sarah Miller's face was too severely damaged to be repaired. After being beaten by David Smith and suffering a miscarriage, her uterus had been removed during surgery, and she could never be a mother. She eventually gave up on the path of making money by relying on men. She actually chose to start live streaming, pursuing a path of gaining fame through controversy. However, netizens cursed her out in her live stream room until she was crying uncontrollably. Robert Henderson sent me a screenshot of her live stream. Looking at the distorted face of the woman, I could barely recognize her. Only a sense of melancholy remained in my heart. The platform was flooded with complaints and reports, and Sarah Miller was eventually banned across all networks. I looked at the account I had muted, which now showed account deleted. I went back to my message list, deleted the notifications about successful reports, and uninstalled the app. I then went to my newly registered email account and cleared the history of my correspondence with that other wife. This moment, finally, was the real end.